us a little bit more about open source and how science and open source mix together. That's actually quite interesting. While they get set up and everything, I just want to give a quick announcement. You remember I mentioned that there is Wi-Fi? Well, we're having some problems with that public Wi-Fi over there. The speaker ones are still okay. So, and also the second thing is, there seems to be a lot of hotspots around here that are turned on, which is affecting our speakers' Wi-Fi. So if I can ask those people who have turned on your hotspots to turn it off, please do that. If you're using your computer with your mobile phone, please plug it in and directly tether so that we have internet for the speakers who are speaking over here. All right? And I see Kat, you're ready? You're ready? Great! So it's open source and science. Give a round of applause for Kat Altman.
Hi. Oh, good. This is on. I'm glad the mic works. My clicker does not work, so I'm going to be kind of hugging the podium. It's not you, it's me. Anyway, so I am Kat Allman. I work at Google. You figured that out. It says so on the shirt. I actually work for two teams at Google, open source outreach. I see there's an entire table of Google Summer of Code people from the past. Great to see you. And also a fairly new team called Google Making and Science. And I'm here today to talk about a little bit about how those two groups within Google interrelate. But before that, I want to say thank you. Thank you most especially to the organizers of FOSS Asia. You've done an amazing job. You always do, but still. To all of you for coming, and for the FOSS Asia community, which has provided so many wonderful mentors to our high school and college students who participate in our open source programs. And also a thank you to the Science Center of Singapore. I'm very excited to be here and have a chance to explore this facility, and I'm sure we all very much appreciate them hosting us on short notice. So, my dual role at Google. Both of them are outreach roles. As you probably know, how shall I say this? Marketing is a little bit of a dirty word in engineering circles. But we won't think of marketing as convincing people to buy junk they don't need. What marketing is really about is helping people find information that they need, similar to, or potentially need, or at least would be interested in, similar to, dare I say it, search engines and the internet. And then making in science. But first I'm going to talk a little bit about the open source team. Stephanie Taylor, who now heads up our Summer of Code and Google Code-In programs, is here and is going to tell you lots more about those programs later today. I'm trying to, can anybody else hear that feedback? Am I holding the mic wrong? Am I okay out there? All right, good. I'll quit worrying about it. Thank you. We also perform a certain amount of in-reach within Google to encourage Google engineers to participate in open source projects, to open source their personally created code whenever possible, and also to help them open source Google code, again, as much as is possible. We are a commercial company. We're not going to open source everything, but we do try. We've open sourced more than 900 packages that I know of in the last, well, I've been with the company almost 9 years. And frankly, the pace of open source releasing just seems to keep going. What Harish was saying about has open source won, sure seems to have won at Google. I mean, the company's built on open source, which is why I get to have an incredibly great job, along with my colleagues Stephanie and Helen. The company's built on it. We do our best to give back. But then on the making and science side, what the heck does that mean? The making and science team exists. Please don't submit this to the press, okay? 2 years ago, Larry Page went to Maker Faire, the original giant Maker Faire in San Mateo, California. Who here has heard of Maker Fairs? Okay, so lots of people have fun things to learn about. That's great. Maker Faire is a weekend event similar to this, but it expands beyond software and hardware engineering to all different kinds of making and craft, be it robots, fractal crochet, cupcake cars, fire dancing, all different kinds of science exploration for kids of all ages. We sponsor the Learn to Solder tent. It's a lot of fun if you like making new stuff. So Larry was there a couple of years ago and he looked around and he didn't really see Google's presence, but he was talking to a man who was there with his child, who was part of a child-based, kind of a Dance Dance Revolution thing. The stuff Bunny was talking about sounded similar, but it was designed for very small kids and built by very small kids. And it lit up when you danced on it. It was really cool. So Larry's talking to this guy and he finally says, well, what is it you do in your day job? And the man looked at Larry and said, Larry, I work for you. So from this humble beginnings, Larry went to our director, Chris DeBona, the head of open source at Google, and suggested that he'd like to see Google do more to support both the sciences and making for Googlers and their kids, but everybody else too. So we get to have an incredibly fun, open-ended, we get to do the coolest stuff. It's so great. But what does that have to do with open source? Well, to begin with, I share my time, then we all sit together, and we share a lot of overlap. The first 8 years, I ran something called Science Food Camp, which is an annual invitation-only conference we work on with Nature Publishing and O'Reilly Media to get the sciences to cross-pollinate across disciplines. We bring a whole bunch of scientists to Google, everything from graduate students to Nobel Prize winners, and they spontaneously create the content for the weekend-long conference by themselves. And from this, all kinds of wacky things have happened, like the process to resurrect 2 different extinct species came out of Science Food Camp. A lot of research papers, academic collaboration, but just bringing people together, bumping up the edges of things. There's a lot of innovation, to use an overworked word, that happens where the edges of things touch and intersect, as with open source. We also do cool things like funding first and other robotics programs, research on STEM education, what actually works at getting kids excited about STEM education. One of the very first things we did was field trip days. We've sent so far 116,000 kids, mostly from what they call under-resourced, AKA poor schools, to science museums by providing them money for lunch and transportation along with the actual cost of the field trip. For many of these kids, it's not only the first time they've ever been to a science museum, it's the first time they've ever been outside of their immediate area. So it's been really inspiring to get to be involved with that process. And it is not just in the US. As much as possible, we try and keep all our programs spread out across as much of the globe as we can. In fact, I think we've talked with the Science Center of Singapore about doing this, but I'll have to check with a colleague about that. So all kinds of different things. That's on just the one team, but we're just part of what Google does around science. First of all, the entire company is built on computer science, so there's that. If anybody here knows anyone or is between 13 and 18 and interested in science, I see a few people that appear to be the right age. Google Science Fair is a global science fair contest And right now, the application period for students just opened. And if you're at all interested, I would encourage you to go online and check it out. It's some of the stuff that the kids, the wicked smart young people have come up with is so inspiring. It's really world-changing science. And the benefits to the participants, not just the immediate winners, are pretty substantial too in terms of their school and follow-on professional careers. We also have Google Research. Our team used to be a part of that. Now we just got moved around. But anyway, massive open online classrooms, aka distance learning, on an enormous global scale. The research behind the hardware behind that came out of Google Research, along with a lot of machine learning. You may have heard about the Go contest, where the computer just beat a Go master. I'm not actually sure how I feel about that, but anyway, so it goes. You may have heard that Google is now, our parent company is called Alphabet, and Google is one of the companies under that. Other, more specifically science-related companies, Google X, the place of moonshots, where Google Glass, the Loon, Internet Balloon, the self-driving car, all came out of Google X. Calico is fascinating. They're working on aging and aging-related diseases. Initially, I believe their focus is on cancer and Alzheimer's. We've got a world-class team of medical researchers hopefully fixing this using machine learning and the kind of computational science that we excel in to address those problems. Google Life Sciences, now called Verily, they're more focused on health enhancement. You can cure disease, but if you can prevent disease, save a lot of time up front. Makani is fascinating. It's an alternative energy company started by a guy who has a MacArthur grant, who's kind of amazing. They're working on kites. So wind turbines that fly, and through the act of flying generate power through the friction of the movement of the kite through air. Amazing stuff. You can go online and find out about that. And lots more, including Google Summer of Code. Science has always been a part of open source. And this is illustrated. These are not all, but I didn't want to use 3-point type, because I don't think most of you can read any of those anyway. Out of the 180 open source projects we accepted to be mentoring orgs this year for Summer of Code, 43 plus of them specifically tagged themselves as being science related. Everything from astronomy, astrophysics hardware design, lots of drones, all kinds of things, lots of genomics, open chemistry. That intersection between science and open source has never been, it's never been real. I mean, open source came out of the academic model of building on other people's work, similar to the scientific method. And so the notion that somehow real science and computer science are two different things has never actually been the case. But more so than ever, scientists need computer science in order to more effectively do their work. And they specifically need open source so that they can do it more effectively and more affordably than they can with proprietary software. So I'm going to show you 3 examples of programs at the intersection of open source, open data, open thought, and science. The first one is something called software carpentry. And as I said, with scientists needing to use open source coding, they actually started in 1998 because they saw science students and science professors being hobbled in their research pursuits by the cost of proprietary software to do the computing they needed to do. So they came up with a model where volunteers lead workshops on basic open source technologies such as version control, basic scripting, things like that. And they give these workshops to science students at universities all around the world. Let's see, what did I say up there? 16,000 learners and 500 plus workshops. They're usually 2-day workshops around the world. And it's mostly volunteer-led. And if anybody's interested in doing, I don't believe they've had a workshop in Singapore. So if anybody's interested in that, find me after my talk and I'll put you in contact with the guy that organizes all this. Another thing is something called squishy circuits. Does everybody know about Play-Doh? Modeling clay? Well, this very smart professor at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota figured out an extremely inexpensive way to make electrically conductive Play-Doh. So you can actually teach kids about electrical circuits using these materials that really cost pennies to put together, though they're very difficult to get through airport security controls, because they do kind of look like plastic explosive. So generally mail them to yourself. Don't take them carry on. But Anne-Marie has, what's it called? It's like Fun Learning Lab, something like that. Her school, she's part of the electrical engineering department, but she also works on the education department to put together workshops to train classroom teachers, mostly at the elementary and junior high level, on how to teach first principles of engineering to students in hopes of getting them interested in STEM. And we were very happy to provide funding so that teachers at school districts that couldn't afford the cost to send the teachers to these workshops could send their teachers and therefore get their kids excited about STEM. And this is an example, which doesn't show up that well, but the Google logo glowing. They're quite fun. You can buy little kits online from squishycircuits.com that have the electrodes and the wires you need and all the instructions about making the Play-Doh. And last but not least of these 3 projects, okay, I wasn't sure if Justin was giving me the evil eye or not. Okay. Wikipedia. I'm going to go out on a limb and say all of you know what Wikipedia is. Safe to say. As you all know, Wikipedia content is generated by volunteers, and therefore there's very deep content on some subjects and less deep content on other subjects. The Wiki Education Foundation wants to increase the content and improve the quality of the content in Wikipedia, specifically this year around science. How they do that is they have programs where they work with university professors so that students, rather than doing term papers which disappear into their parents' basement, actually they generate Wikipedia articles which are vetted by their professors in the subject they're studying, therefore increasing the body of content in Wikipedia around science topics while teaching the kids about how to communicate science concepts and generally make Wikipedia richer, in part because whereas most Wikipedia editors, I think in general 10% of the editors are women, in this particular effort 65% of the editors are women, bringing a fresh perspective overall to Wikipedia's content. And they also are working to have more content generated in languages other than English, which is also extremely important. Thanks. And we're very proud to be a major funder of this effort for this year. Oh, and now he is giving me the evil eye, so I'm going to wrap it up. No, really, why does Google care about science? Well, science and open source are all about creating new knowledge. And as you know, Google is all about organizing the world's information and making it universally accessible. So the more information there is, the more information we get to organize and make accessible. So it's really a net win for us all. Plus it's really fun. And I would encourage you all to embrace that fun. This is my favorite quote from an American poet named Mary Oliver. The world offers itself to your imagination. Open source, as with science, gives you the opportunity to stretch yourself and create new aspects of the world for all of us and make the world better. which is an amazingly fun thing to do. So I encourage you to get out there and have some fun. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Kat. That was a great presentation about what's happening with Google and the contributions from open source and science. All right, so next up we have